welcome to the Sunday night edition of Inside the Lines. We're looking at Week 10 for the NFL, early look-ahead lines, things to act now on, where this team's going to go. But we also have some college football for you tonight. And then Jake's going to be in the chat talking about some college basketball, which starts on Monday. Exciting stuff there. So, Jake, let's talk about some of these totals that we think are going to start to move later in this week. And we think this is the best value we're going to get here.
Yeah, so our model is a good indicator of where the line's likely to move. So if we have an A pick on an over or an under, it's likely because it might go away, but it's good to hop on it now because that's usually where the line moves towards. So the SMU North Texas, two really high-powered offenses. SMU's defense has been good at times. They played really well against Oklahoma and some other good teams. North Texas defense is not so great. So this is already up in the 68, 68.5 in some places. I would get, if you like the over, I'd get it now because I can see this closing at 70, 71.
A game we think might go under, we have the projection for 50 points, line 64, UCF, Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I think like probably 60 is more a realistic projection, but the model uses the past couple of years stats, and Oklahoma State's and UCF's defense has been a lot better the last couple of years than it is this year. Both teams have struggled at times on defense. But both teams are very run heavy, and with the new clock rule, that means the clock's going to keep on ticking. And Oklahoma State, they have Ollie Gordon, who I think he leads the country in rushing yards. He's been a beast, and UCF's just going to game plan around him, and hopefully they can tackle him because I think there's a good chance that this game goes under. UCF, John Rice Plumlee hasn't been consistent throwing the ball, but they've been running the ball pretty well. I think this game could go down to like 60, 61.
Okay. Good to know. We'll move to another game here. My question for you, I guess, with these lower profile games, is this considered an act now situation? Like, do you think enough people are betting on these Sunday night to know that?
I think so. I think these are good. Like, this is the lowest you're going to get them on Sunday night. Sunday when they first open at 5 p.m. is when most of them become, like Steve said, when no one has a life like us, this is the best time. Yes. So like most people really like move the spread on Monday and Tuesday. That's when the most movement is. But now's the best time to get it, and especially when our model has value, because that indicates where it's going to move. So if you're smart, the earlier you get on a game you like, the better value you're going to get.
So here, Rice, UTSA, we like them to go over this 59.5.
Yeah, I think if they played last year, this total would have probably been 68, 70 in that range. So I think you're getting good value. I think this probably, so Steven said it's up to 61 in two sports books. I can see 63, 64 closing. So you're getting the best value now. Also, with all these games, check weather. I think all these games, the weather should be fine, but that's a good reason to wait if there is potential for bad weather. But I think this game's only going to move up. And all these games we've talked about, all four games, they've already moved a couple spots in several sports books. So get them before you move, and you're just getting extra value. You're getting EV.
Yeah, we're all about the value here. That's why we're here on the Sunday night doing the hard work. We got some people in the chat with us here on the grind. I like it. All right, let's move to one more game here. Troy versus ULM. Total is set at 46. You think this could start steaming to the under?
Yeah, Troy's an under team, as we've mentioned. A lot of the games have come right around 40 points for Troy. ULM, this is the biggest concern is ULM's defense. They haven't been that great, and Troy's offense is good at sometimes. So they might take advantage of a bad defense here. So maybe you want to go with a ULM team total under here. If you want that, you probably have to wait till Wednesday or Thursday to get.
Right.
But I think this line's just going to move down. I can see 44, 43 closing.
Okay, good to know. So a few college football games, sneaky college football games that not everyone's paying attention to, that I think is great to get your act now value on. That's all we have so far for college football. Any college basketball questions you have, Jake's the guy to ask. I'm going to send him to the chat for those things. We're going to bring in Steven. We're going to talk some NFL. Let's get into Week 10, talk about our predictions. Now, these are the Week 10 look-ahead lines that we're looking at here. So before these games started. But Steven, you usually have a pretty good idea of where these games are going to go. So let's start with your Ravens. Cleveland going to Baltimore. Yeah. A good day for you so far.
It has been good. So both teams statistically dominated on defense, but I don't think Cleveland's going to get much credit. You know, the Arizona team was starting Clayton Tune, who was a rookie from Houston. And the fact is, last year's Houston Cougars probably had more offensive talent than the current Arizona Cardinals, because Tank Dell was on Houston's teams last year, and he just won the game for the Texans today. So that's shutout with 50 yards allowed isn't going to register much. Whereas Baltimore's complete shutout of 3 points allowed to Seattle, 85 of Seattle's 151 total yards came on 2 plays. So it was just really a controlling defense by Baltimore. It's amazing that they're allowing under 14 points a game this year. So, and then on top of that, Baltimore had an explosive, coming out party for Keaton Mitchell at running back. So when you add that to the fact that Lamar has a chance of, as of tonight, might end up being the number 1 pass in the league in completion percentage, combined with this defense, combined with having the best kicker of all time, combined with having Keaton Mitchell, this line's already steaming to 5.5 in a couple of spaces, and I think it'll go to 6. Even though Cleveland dominated.
Yeah, that Mitchell coming out party did not fare well for my Gus Edwards rushing and receiving prop. But
I know. Even though he had a 40-yard rush, that was a tough one.
Yeah. All right, let's move to the Niners headed to Jacksonville. The line was set at 2.5, 44.5. Where do you see this team going?
I don't think the line's going to move because both teams are coming off a bye, so people have plenty of time. I think there's a chance of rain, and the wind is in the mid-teens. So maybe the weather turns a little worse. There could be a play on the steam on the under. I think there could be steam on the under because Jacksonville's run defense is playing so well recently. And in San Francisco has got to be a little worried about putting too much on Brock Purdy's plate. So maybe they'll stick with the run, even if it's not as effective as it normally would be. San Francisco got Chase Young. He'll have some time to acclimate. So I could see that this 44.5 is a pretty high total in today's NFL where scoring's down.
Right. Let's move over. The Vikings doing what no one thought they could do. New Orleans going to Minnesota. New Orleans laying 2.5. Do you agree with this line here?
I do agree with the line, but I do think the steam is going to be on the Vikings. The Vikings were very, Josh Dobbs didn't even know anyone's name, and he came in and he led a comeback. And more importantly, it seemed like based on whoever in my Twitter stream, a lot of prominent national media types and social seem to have a lot going on with backing the Saints, and the Saints let them down with they didn't kick a field goal where they should have. They doinked the field goal where they could have covered, and then even at the end where they could have kicked the field goal to cover, but instead got the first down to run out the clock. When you kind of annoy people and cost them real money, who are also active on social, I could see this, the public going to Minnesota's side just out of, ill will towards the Saints.
Mm-hmm. Let's move to Green Bay, headed to Pittsburgh. Green Bay didn't look very impressive by any means here. Pitt laying 2.5. Do you like this line here? Where do you see the movement going?
Yeah, I mean, Green Bay, they won 20-7, but the Rams didn't have, they had Brett Rippon, his father was probably better, could probably have done better than this. And but I think that the quarterbacks of both teams, they're going to preach, do not lose the game. Our defenses are good enough to win this game. Do not blow it. And that never is a recipe for a lot of points. George Pickens posted on social, he took off his Steelers, anything Steelers related, and said, get me out of here or something to that effect. I think he used a curse word or two. So I see that this game, I think the steam could become on the under, even though it's already at such a low number, 37.5.
Let's move to a game. Now, this is an interesting situation from a model perspective here with Will Levis now 2 games under his belt, going to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay 1.5-point home favorites. What can we say about Will Levis from the model perspective right now, and what do we think about him?
Yeah, I mean, he has only played 2 games, and the first game was obviously ridiculously productive with 4 passing touchdowns, but he was very good against Pittsburgh. But ultimately, in the stat line, he didn't have a lot of points, right? So the model actually is leaning on Tampa Bay and the under, but I would never put that out as a strong pick because we don't know how Levis is going to be. I think the steam though is going to be on the over because you saw Tampa Bay today, impressive, looked like they were going to have a comeback win. At the same time, their defense was equally unimpressive. So I think that the feeling will be Levis and the Titans, have something going offensively. Tampa's offense is looking good. Their defense is not looking good. And this game could go over. I think the line will creep up to the 40s.
Mm-hmm. A game with a lot of, I guess, question marks, you can say, Kyler Murray's situation. Even if he does play, do you think there's going to be an overreaction to that? Where does the model like it here?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the model doesn't apply. I guess say in this case, because obviously we knew DeAndre Hopkins is gone because he was traded, but God, I didn't remember. But last year when Hopkins would miss games, Kyler was not good, and so right now they don't have their running game is a mess. Even Michael Wilson, the rookie wide receiver, was playing okay, missed today. I don't know how he is for this next week. So Zach Ertz is out. So with this Hollywood Brown, Trey McBride, Rondale Moore receiving threats, that doesn't bode well. And with no running game, does not bode well for Kyler, even if he is back. At the same time, Atlanta, they had some good moments offensively, but their defense couldn't stop, Josh Dobbs, who had just gotten there and didn't take a single snap in practice. So I think that people are going to be confused and it's going to stay away as far as what the line should be on this one.
Mm-hmm. Let's move to Seattle here. Now, Washington almost feels like an Arizona situation where everyone thought they were just going to, hand in the towel, but it seems like their defense is actually trying regardless of the trades and the situations going on there.
Yeah, so Washington, so ordinarily you would think, okay, Washington, very impressive in a win at New England. Seattle loses by 34 points. So you would have to say this team's going to go to Washington, but I think it's going to go the other way. So we have a precedent. Detroit was a great team, and they got demolished by nearly 30 points at Baltimore. And then they come back the next week, and even though they had some self-inflicted wounds, they still covered this pretty large spread, because when a game is so bad and so out of hand, I think what we're learning here, people could say that's more about Baltimore being when Baltimore's playing well, their A game, they're kind of a juggernaut, and people think that teams that they know are actually good going back home, get embarrassed on TV will end up stepping up, and so because Detroit followed that pattern, I think you're going to see the same thing here. And people are going to say, okay, Seattle lost because NFC teams never do well against Lamar, 1-18 now. And West Coast teams traveling for an early game, the East Coast can't penalize them for that. They're down early, and it was just, too much to overcome. So I think Seattle comes back, and the line's going to go to Seattle, which is, again, hard. That same thing happened to Detroit. We thought the line would go towards Detroit a few weeks ago, and they bounced, and it did, and they ended up covering.
Yeah. No, exactly. When I saw this line, I immediately thought of Detroit as well. It's a very similar situation coming off a loss to the Ravens. Let's move over to the Colts now. Their defense looked great. Mac Jones not looking great per usual. Do you think we'll see a lot of steam coming in on the Colts here?
I do. Ordinarily, it's kind of hard to imagine that. But, after what Sam Howell kind of picked apart the Patriots, I think that the steam will come to Indianapolis. They just, got 2 pick sixes against Bryce Young. So it's hard. Yeah. And I think that at this point, New England is going to be the team that kind of gives up. They just have too many injuries on the defensive end too. And it's really obvious.
Mm-hmm. Let's move over to Bryce Young. Bryce Young now going to the Bears. Battle of the 2 most talented teams in the league. Chicago laying 1.5 points, home favorites. How do we feel about that?
I think this team's going to be on Chicago. I mean, Bajan, they say Justin Fields might play or probably will play, but Bajan was actually pretty good until he threw some picks late. But he was moving the ball. He ran the ball very well. And most importantly, Bryce Young was awful, and he threw 2 pick sixes, more TDs to Kenny Moore, who's unfortunately a Colt, than his own team, more touchdowns to the defense. And it's also the DJ Moore revenge game angle. I think that people are going to like Chicago in this spot. Chicago, they seem to be playing more effort. And then just statistically, Carolina, their home defense is actually pretty good. They did a pretty good job against the run today against Indianapolis, but on the road they give up, I want to say, 5 or more points per game than they do at home. So I think once people start breaking down those splits and then the narratives, I think this team's going to move to Chicago, and you want to get it before it goes to 3.
Any model value on this game?
We like Chicago because Bryce is not
Not
good. I angered some people on Twitter yesterday because I said Jalen Milroe of Alabama will have a better NFL career than Bryce Young.
Mhm.
And now I'm more convinced than ever that I think he might be better than Bryce Young.
Right.
Though. So
Right. Fair.
Bryce is my size. I feel like I'm watching
I know.
myself run around.
I'm scared for him. I feel like we might like weigh the same. I don't know. All right.
Yeah.
So that's all we
pretty
have.
Sure I do.
All right. That's all. Those are 10 NFL games to look into. Know where this team is. Pretty spot on when predicting where this team is going. So if there are certain lines you like that are in line with this team, this is a time to act now on those. 4 more games we'll go over tomorrow as well once we have a little more information under our belt, once we watch those play out. But we'll certainly get to some act now plays, tell you what the model likes, tell you what it doesn't. Plenty of stuff to go over this week. So use this show to your advantage. Get your best value that you can tonight. This is the most important show of the week. So with that, good luck with your bets the rest of the night and Monday Night Football, and we'll see you tomorrow at 1.